Barely over a quarter of our presidents have served 2 terms during their presidency. George W. Bush is one of them. During his presidency, he encountered a lot of difficulties, such as when the terrorists attacked on 9/11, which killed nearly 3,000 people, when Hurricane Katrina landed in the southeast portion of the United States, killing around 1,800 people and caused $161 billion in property damage, and when the stock market almost crashed in 2008. One of those situations would have been tremendously stressful, but I can't imagine how much pressure he was under when all 3 of those happened during his presidency. I know if I was president, I would have been terrified. Former President George W. Bush's final speech at the White House on January 15th of 2009, he went through his time and what stood out to him. He was in the East Room of the nation's capital. And based on the audience's reaction, they all supported him, or at least respected him, in some way, shape, or form. On September 11th of 2001, at 8:46 a.m., George W. Bush was in Sarasota, Florida, going to an elementary school, the Emma E. Booker Elementary School, to show that he meant business about school. That's when the first plane hit. And he just thought it was a costly mistake, so he went about his day. The second plane hit minutes later, and he knew it was an attack. But since he was surrounded by little elementary school kids, he knew he needed to stay calm in the eye of the storm. Hurricane Katrina was something I heard about when I was growing up, but I always thought it happened in 2012 or 2015. It happened in 2005. That natural disaster caused people, like I said earlier, $161 billion in property damage, while leaving thousands homeless.
Like all who have held this office before me, I have experienced setbacks. And there are things I would do differently if given the chance. Yet I've always acted with the best interests of our country in mind. I have followed my conscience and done what I thought was right. You may not agree with some of the tough decisions I have made, but I hope you can agree that I was willing to make the tough decisions. The decades ahead will bring more hard choices for our country, and there are some guiding principles that should shape our course. While our nation is safer than it was 7 years ago, the greatest threat to our people remains another terrorist attack. Our enemies are patient and determined to strike again. America did nothing to seek or deserve this conflict, but we have been given solemn responsibilities, and we must meet them. We must resist complacency. We must keep our resolve, and we must never let down our guard. At the same time, we must continue to engage the world with confidence and clear purpose. In the face of threats from abroad, it can be tempting to seek comfort by turning inward. But we must reject isolationism and its companion, protectionism. Retreating behind our borders would only invite danger. In the 21st century, security and prosperity at home depend on the expansion of liberty abroad. If America does not lead the cause of freedom, that cause will not be led. Like all who have held this office before me,
Ethos. George W. Bush was the governor of Texas before he became president. Since he was already in a political spotlight, it would have been easier for him to become president from governor rather than just a regular citizen to president. He served 2 times. Not many people do that. And he dressed nice. He sounded better and more reliable because he was wearing a suit rather than sweatpants and a sweatshirt. And that means one of 3 things. 1, he's a good leader. 2, he's a great president. Or 3, he's a good politician. Pathos. George W. Bush was President of the United States, and that means he was a world leader. And I thought it was probably bad that he was stuttering in his speech a few times, but that puts it in perspective for me, that no matter how important you are or how higher up or what leader you are, you're still human and you're still bound to make mistakes. Logos. George W. Bush speaks calmly throughout his whole speech. He might have a difference in volume or a different speed, but he doesn't yell or argue or try to get his point across. He just talks calmly and his point gets delivered. Rhetorical devices. I found 5 rhetorical devices during his speech. Distincto, I think that's how it's pronounced. That means you have 2 sentences and the word at the end of the sentence in the first sentence is the beginning of the sentence. And the second one, polysideton, is the usage of the word and. America's air and water and lands. Simile, he's comparing 2 things. Like all who have held this office before me, he's comparing former presidents to himself. Alliteration. Our nation is equipped with new tools to monitor the terrorist movements, freeze their finances, and break up their plots. And repetition. We see America's character in Dr. Tony R., who opened a new school from the ruins of Hurricane Katrina. We see it in Julio Medina, an inmate who leads a faith-based program to help prisoners return to society. We see it in Aubrey McDade, who went into ambush to save his fellow Marines in Iraq. We see it in Bill Kristoff, a surgeon from California. Why the speech will endure? It will endure because he was a president, and he was a world leader. And being a world leader, for any country, anywhere, you're a part of history, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. He talks about things that he would do differently, things I do differently if given the chance. Yet I've always acted with the best interests of our country in mind. I followed my conscience and done what I thought was right. You might not agree with what I have done, but I hope you can agree that I was willing to make the tough decisions. Thank you for listening to my speech.